Well, let's turn to those developing lines that have just been coming in, because Qatar says a deal has been agreed to extend the truce in Gaza for another 2 days. There's been no confirmation yet from Israel, but that is being reported by the Reuters news agency, also the AFP news agency. A fourth exchange of hostages for prisoners appears closer after Israel notified relatives of those about to be released. So let's head back to Tel Aviv, back to Anna Foster. And Anna, things appear to be moving after some delay.
They are, Matthew, as we were discussing just a few minutes ago as well. It is the Qataris who have made that announcement about the extension in this ceasefire. We've also had a statement now from Hamas on their official website, Hamas declaring that it has agreed, it says, with Qatar and Egypt. It doesn't obviously mention Israel. It says it has agreed with Qatar and Egypt to extend the temporary humanitarian truce for an additional 2 days under the same conditions that were reached before. And as we were discussing, Qatar are very much the people who are driving this. You can see there that tweet on X on your screen just now. The state of Qatar announces, as part of the ongoing mediation, an agreement has been reached to extend the humanitarian truce for an additional 2 days in the Gaza Strip. This is Majid Al-Ansari, who's the official spokesperson for the Qatari Ministry of Foreign Affairs. As we were saying, Matthew, we were discussing this just in the last 10 minutes or so, weren't we? Saying that, it is very much something that we expected, because the momentum, the mood music, the messaging that was coming out from parties like Egypt, who also sit around the table, was strongly that the parties were in favour of this happening. We reflected that from the beginning of this deal being put in place, there were provisions that enabled it to continue for a little bit longer. There was a longer list of Palestinian prisoners who would be eligible for release that was published than was needed. 150 names would have covered those 4 days, but they published the names of 300. Israel had said that they would be prepared to extend the ceasefire for an extra 24 hours for every additional 10 hostages who were released. Now, interestingly, Matthew, for the first 4 days of this deal, we saw 13 hostages a day. What Israel had offered for the extension was 10 a day, but it seems to be they're talking about the same conditions as previously. So that means we would expect to see, over those additional 2 days, 13 Israeli hostages freed each day in return for 39 Palestinian prisoners being held in Israeli jails. They do it on a 3-to-1 ratio. But we do now have that confirmation from the Qataris that that has been agreed, and that ceasefire, which would have ended at the end of today, at the end of day 4, will now continue for 2 further days, making this a 6-day agreement in total.
Anna, it is, well, the weather is much poorer today, and there are fewer people in the square, but I know you've been talking to hostage families throughout the last 4 days. Give me a sense of where many of those people are, because for many, they will have seen those scenes of reunions, be uplifted by that, pleased for those families. But of course, so many of the families still awaiting the return of their loved ones, not on any list so far.
That's right. And actually, Matthew, that's a really pertinent question, because one thing that has been common of all of the hostage families that I've spoken to, and particularly hostage families who knew that they have male relatives who are waiting to be released, who were never going to be part of this deal, because this deal was only ever going to involve women and children. And when you speak to those people who are waiting for male relatives, they were really pleased about the deal, because they said, look, any release, it opens the door to something further. If we can achieve successful releases of hostages, then even though we know that our loved ones are not part of this deal, it shows that it can be done. It proves that there is ground that can be worked on, that there's a foundation there for this to be extended. And I think this further 2 days of this deal shows that they were right to have that level of faith. Now, we're still looking at a relatively small number. There is originally around 240 hostages that were being held of a variety of different nationalities. So what this doesn't do is fully release all of those hostages. But the family's opinion is a really important one, and you're right to focus on that, Matthew, because they've also become a very close-knit group as well. And in fact, the joy and happiness that you see from some of those families, even when the relatives that are being released are not theirs, because they've met each other, they've held vigils together, they've held protests together, they've met these new people, become very close to them, and they feel that joy as well for their new friends that they have seen their relatives released. But I think for every step along the way, for every release, it offers a bit of hope, and hostage families will be feeling more of that again tonight.
Anna Foster, once again there in Tel Aviv. Thanks very much. We'll be back to you in a short while.